All right. Welcome back. New episode for me. A topic I used to be really passionate about: sensory deprivation tanks. Most people might not know this, but when I started my weight loss journey back in early 2016, one of the things that I turned to pretty early on in that journey was sensory deprivation. I heard it on Joe Rogan Experience. We had a place locally in Boise that was pretty close to my work, so I gave it a shot. I loved it. I floated quite a few times between 2016 and probably about 2018. Obviously, on that journey, that weight loss journey, I got into a lot of different things. I got into biking, I got into yoga, I got into deep dove into Brazilian jiu-jitsu and weightlifting and all kinds of things. So it was one of those things that ended up getting kind of pushed to the side. As much as I enjoyed the experience, I just stopped making time for it. Max Casa is my guest. He's one of those dudes in the float business that I'm following. He's a really emotionally centered guy. And I can tell that he spends a lot of time contemplating. And I love conversations like this. And we really flowed well together right off the bat. He educated me on this topic of sensory deprivation and flotation tanks that I knew a little bit about, but certainly hungry to learn more about. So I feel smarter walking away. I feel reinvigorated to get back in the tank for sure. And I think I'm going to. I know I'm going to. Looking at the calendar through the next couple months or through the end of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised if I got maybe 2 to 5 floats in. We'll see. Just need to check out who is providing services in Idaho these days. Go out, check out maxvitality.co to see what Max has got going on. It's good stuff, man. He's got his magnesium salts, and then also he's selling tanks. Guy's living in Hawaii. He's doing some cool shit. So definitely listen to the podcast to learn more. Quickly here, appreciate the support and the love from brands like Few Will Hunt. The code JBP at checkout saves you 15% off of gear. They're awesome, man. I saw a friend at the gym the other day. She was wearing the handouts don't make standout shirt. It's so badass to see the Few Will Hunt clothes in the wild. They've kind of taken over. They're all over the place. It feels like I can't walk into a jiu-jitsu gym. Or I can't work out or walk into a weightlifting gym without at least seeing a little Few Will Hunt here and there. And again, you can save money. Use that code JBP at checkout. Save yourself 15% off your order. And then also Fellowship brand. Come on now. We're getting into the fall and the winter. I know you're gonna grow a beard out, or the people that you love might, venture out, decide to let that facial hair just expand and expand. And it'll get all rat nasty and nasty, and their face will get dry, and if things are cold outside, just put some all natural oils on it. Just let it relax. Hell, you might get a little wild. Try some beard butter. Who knows? Regardless, JBP saves you money on premium grooming products at fellowshipbrand.com. Go to the website, use that code JBP at checkout. All right, let's float on with Max Casa. All right, welcome to the show.
My man, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Dude, I'm so excited to have you on the show today, especially because you are an expert in the world of optimized living. Before I have just a million questions, like as I prep for these things, but before I dive into that body of questions, why don't you help us get anchored in who is Max? Where's Max living? What's Max doing? How'd you get to where you are right this moment?
Yeah, trying to see where to start, but ultimately I'm a lifelong martial artist at the root of it. And my parents got me involved in martial arts when I was just 4 years old, thankfully. And at the time they got me involved in it with the hope of it helping me combat a degenerative neuromuscular disease I was diagnosed with at birth called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, or CMT for short. But yeah, thankfully it was the martial arts, because it could have been many things. And thankfully I ended up sticking with it because it's become a huge part of my life these past 20 plus years now. And really, that's kind of where it started. Just as I got older and started teaching and competing in the martial arts more, I was just constantly looking for ways to optimize my mind and body, much like yourself, so I tried everything from more high-end Western world technologies to shamanic South American brews and Chinese philosophies.
I just had some
ayahuasca
people on.
Yes, sir. You got another one.
There you go.
But yeah, we'll see how it all ties back to floating too. But ultimately, just my life really has did a 180 one day when I was leaving the dojo. I was in the middle of training camp at the time, and I ended up going to a float center in town back in Massachusetts where I was living at the time. And at the time, man, we're going back like 8 years. It was the only float center in all of New England as a whole. So we can see how much the industry's totally expanded and blown up these past 20 years now, the past 10 years even. But yeah, man. So after that first float session, I literally came out of the tank and I was literally just buzzing with this sensation of relaxation and pure inner peace that I had never experienced before in my entire life at that point. Especially then, I was in the middle of fight camp, which was one of the most stressful things going on in my life at the time. But ultimately, just ended up floating more and diving into the research and how this is helping so many people, and ended up becoming so inspired that I started my company, Max Vitality, where we now customize and install float therapy chambers all over the globe.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. First off, um, the neuromuscular disorder that you brought up earlier on. Can you I'm not familiar with this at all. So would you mind like just double clicking on that real quick and just helping me understand what that's like, and what did it present unique challenges as a child, or was it one of those things that you were just trying to combat adulthood? A lot of neuromuscular disorders kind of evolve with time, is my understanding, but help me
Mm-hmm.
understand this one.
Yeah, so CMT, it's degenerative neuromuscular disease, and really the way it works in your peripheral nerves. So especially the nerves at your extremities, and then as time goes on, and my perspective on neuromuscular diseases and CMT in particular has been expanded and deepened with my works in the float tank and different plant medicines of sorts. But ultimately what it is in the medical field, it's known to kind of degenerate your nerves at the extremities, usually your hands and your feet, and then over time work its way up, where you lose function of your extremities, and
Okay.
ultimately it's just kind of tightening and shortening the tendons and ligaments. um, but yeah,
And the idea
we
of
can.
doing martial arts to combat that then is just being very active with your hands, keeping blood flow going there, making sure that your body understands that these are parts of my body that I need and that I'm going to use.
Yeah, man, you gotta use them before you lose them.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, but really, yeah, like I said, like the balance was a big one at the time. So I was probably 7 years old, still taking walking classes at school. So the balance is a big one, and coordination. Yeah, it didn't seem like I had much of an athletic path if you're looking at me when I was 4 years old. But the martial arts really helped me ground me in my body and connect me with my body, uh, enough so that I could have a more meaningful career in something like the martial arts. And it's been great.
Well, hell yeah, man. And so, and obviously you mentioned float tanks. So like, let's dive right into this, because this is a topic that I enjoyed. Let me tell you my understanding and some of
Yeah,
the
totally.
experiences that I've had. And then I'd love for you to educate me on, like, one, maybe some of the biochemical things that are happening here, some of the like all the benefits that maybe I'm shut out to, just kind of knew that I like doing. But
Yeah.
um I was listening to Rogan, like a lot of people, right? And he starts talking about this dude down in Santa Monica or Venice or whatever it is. I don't know if it's Float Lab or something like that. He starts talking about this guy. He starts talking about this sensory deprivation tank he had in his basement. This was years ago, right? And I'm like, all right, like, let's see if there's any place that does it in my area. And there actually was a spot that did it. And the guy had like an older model. They're all like capsulated and cool. And I've seen your website, and I've encouraged people to go check out Max Vitality and go check out the float tanks that are on there, so you can understand what we're talking about. They look like spaceships, basically. This one did not. It looked like a square box, and then it had like a kind of a square lid. It smelled a little musty when I got in there, not gonna lie. So I had to get over that. But I like, one, I the fact that you just truly like float, like there's so much salt, I think, in the water, that you're just bouncing and buoyant. It took me a while to get comfortable, but I was able to kind of slip into that state the first time that I went. Like, and I was there probably for about 30 minutes in that state. It took me like 30 minutes to kind of figure out, and I kept touching my face like a dummy. And I kept getting salt water in my eyes like an idiot. But like, after that, I felt like I was floating to the right, and then my left arm touched the wall. And I
Mm,
realized that I had kind of lost an understanding of really where my body was in this water. And I remember walking out. I was riding a motorcycle at the time, everywhere that I went, and so I remember walking out and getting on that motorcycle and starting to ride, and just the smells and the sounds, like everything, like it was just amplified. Like I could see things, I could see the colors differently, and I was like, man, there's got to be something to this. And so if you knew me from 2016 through 2018, we probably had a conversation about sensory deprivation because I was just like parroting how awesome it was.
yeah.
And then unfortunately, it slipped out of my practice around 2018, 2019. I probably went once or twice, and then COVID hit. I haven't been in a tank in like 4 or 5 years. So that's my
Wow.
understanding. I probably floated 20, 30 times total, but it's been a little bit. So I don't know a lot about the technology, and I certainly don't know about the things that it was doing to my body or why I felt that way when I got out. But you, being an expert, maybe help educate me and the listeners about what was going on.
Yeah, totally, dude. Well, I'm glad you had so many great float experiences and you were flying high. Yeah, man, it's about the same time that I was getting into it, 2015, 2016. Um, at the time, Rogan was definitely hot on it, and I think he inspired a lot of us to get out and try it at
Oh
least,
yeah.
which was so beautiful. But yeah, really kicked off the industry there, and kind of we saw this resurgence these past 7 years. But for anyone that any of your listeners that aren't super familiar, you hit the nail on the head. But really, floating or sensory deprivation, it's the same thing, is a powerful healing tool that's totally taken the West Coast and Europe by storm, especially these past 10 to 20 years. But really, floating involves getting in a tank. I mean, now there's so many different styles of tanks. Now, a lot of them, like the ones on our website, you see the big egg shaped, luxurious looking hot tub type tanks, spaceship, as you called it, which is nice. Uh, and now there's totally open float pools, which clients can lay in, which is awesome as well. And it kind of looks like a small pool without a cover on top at all, which is great for anxious or claustrophobic clients. Now, just the whole room itself is sensory deprived. It's like no windows, and the temperature of the room is heated and kept at skin temperature and that sort of stuff. But ultimately, inside this tank, whatever kind of tank it is the most unique healing environment on the face of planet Earth, hands down. Because inside this chamber, there is 10 inches of water, 10 to 14 inches of water. But these 10 inches of water are super saturated with over 1,000 pounds of magnesium salts, typically Epsom
Wow.
salts.
I didn't realize it was that much. 1,000 pounds.
Man, it's so much, so much. So to the point, it creates an extremely buoyant saltwater solution, so buoyant, as you pointed out, that you could literally take a bowling ball, put it in the water, and it would easily float to the top like a cork. So it enables effortless floating. And on top of that, the health benefits of the Epsom salts alone have been well known and well documented for hundreds, even thousands of years at this point. But it's not just the 1,000 pounds of magnesium salts that makes this environment so unique, because inside that chamber, as you know, is also totally void of all external sensory inputs altogether, meaning that in a properly calibrated flotation environment, not even a single photon of light is entering the user's experience at all, right? There's no sound, because not only is the tank itself sound resistant, but the user's also wearing earplugs. There's no smells, there's no taste, there's no movement, there's no speech, and there's not even a sensation of touch, which is the hardest one to null out, because the saltwater solution in the tank and the air inside the chamber is precisely heated and kept at 94.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And what's so magical about 94.5 is the exact same temperature as the external layer of your skin. So what happens usually within like 30 minutes of entering the tank is the user's brain loses sensation of where their body ends and where the water begins. And this can lead to profound spiritual, oftentimes life-changing experiences. But
Yeah,
ultimately, yeah.
somebody once explained it to me as like your olfactory in your nose. Like if you smell something that you're not used to smelling, like in Idaho, out in Nampa, Idaho, we have this like sugar beet factory. If you're not
Mhm.
from around here and you're driving through, you're gonna smell those sugar beets. But if you live right around it, you get used to that smell, right? And my understanding was like when your brain does the same thing with your skin and all your other senses, it's just kind of like, all right, this is where we are. Okay, we're safe. I don't have to fire off a whole bunch of neurons and stuff or nerves or whatever. All right. So we're just hanging. Okay, cool. And then you just kind of get used to that environment, like disappear into the water as it was described to me.
Totally. Yeah, like you say, all those defense mechanisms that we have subconsciously that are constantly, like, so much of our energy and our awareness is constantly on the external world, right? As a defense mechanism, naturally. So when there's no external stimulation coming in from any of our senses, a lot of really cool stuff happens. Like the sensitivity knob and all of those senses continues to increase more and more and more as our brain is infinitely looking for some sort of stimulus and it infinitely cannot find one inside the float tank. So you see is that sensitivity knob and all your senses continues to skyrocket, right?
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. But yeah,
What,
what a
what,
lot of
what,
people
a,
don't.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to point out, building off what you said, a lot of people don't recognize that two of the largest stressors to our nervous system are two things, and they're seldomly talked about. One is the fact that we're constantly having to incessantly, our brains process the world's overstimulation. And that's a huge stressor. Over
Yeah.
10 million bits of sensory overstimulation every single second. And when you stack that with the fact, one of the other largest stressors to our nervous system that isn't really looked at this way because we've kind of evolved on Earth per se and lived here our whole life. But there's this gravitational stress or this stress from the forces of gravity that is playing an immense role on our entire being. And it can be an immense stressor at certain times.
You mean
Um,
you mean this 28,000-mile ball that we're on that's spinning at tens of thousands of miles an hour, hurling through the universe? Um, that's putting stress on us. When you
yeah, man,
think
a
about
lot of
it,
people
it's a
wouldn't
pretty
believe it.
crazy thing, but you are being pulled to the center of the earth, right? I mean, that's essentially what's happening as it's spinning, and as the earth has mass and gravity, your body's just used to it. But that makes sense to me that your body has to exert some kind of energy with the downward pressures, I guess, of gravity. I don't understand.
Yeah, imagine. So we're even me and you right here. We're sitting podcasting, right? Having a great chat. But imagine how extremely hard your spinal cord and your musculoskeletal system is working right now in this moment, even to stop your head from drooping to the side, right? But never mind your entire body from just falling to the ground like a sack of potatoes.
Hmm.
So this is all tension and stress that's
Yeah.
held in our muscles, it's held in our lymph, it's held in our capillaries, our smooth muscle tissues, and our fascia, and all this. This is an immense amount of tension. And for me, I really wasn't able to kind of detach from that until I started floating regularly and recognizing how I felt without this immense stressor on every single part of my body. Because again, we're in a
Hmm.
true zero gravity environment there.
You mentioned a little bit earlier as well the strain on the nervous system. A couple thoughts here. I got into cold plunging about 3 or 4 years ago,
Yep.
as a way to, one, recover for jujitsu, and then two, to manage stress. And the thing that I heard was that your breath is the only involuntary organ that you can take control of in that way, and that it has impacts into your nervous system. So, like, as you're cold and you're freezing and you start shaking, you breathe through it and your body will end up relaxing. And I was having this conversation with my wife because I always try to get her to get in, and I brought up the idea of like fight or flight. Like, you're simulating a fight or flight response and you're breathing through it, and that gives you some benefits, at least what I've read. And then she comes to me, oh, I don't know, a couple weeks later, and she had met with she's doing some like gut health stuff right now. And she met with somebody that said, "Hey, listen, like, the fight or flight response is not just when you get like scared. And it's not just like when things like happen that you either have to fight or run from. It's literally happening all day, every day. Like, you are taxing your nervous system all the time." And one of the things that my wife has brought into our house in the last couple of weeks was like really taking the time to eat, like just stopping and smelling the food and getting your body to understand that it's time to eat, and that you are in a safe place, and that you're just kind of ramping things down a little bit to peel back that underlining human animal and allow that human animal to like feed and to feast in a way that it used to. Because now we're always so preoccupied, shoving shit into our mouths and going from point A to point B and all this other stuff. And as I'm having you on the podcast and I was preparing for this, I was like, man, like that's essentially what this whole thing is. It is just giving yourself a break. And it's really just kind of down regulating a lot of different things to help you process the world that we're living in and just take a second away from the fight or flight when you're not actually like sleeping. Does any of that resonate? Am I on target at least a
Big
little?
time, big time, man. Yeah, and I feel there's so much in that, but I love what your partner's been doing about bring more mindfulness and consciousness around even the eating. I mean, we could dive into that as well, but even so many things of delve deeper down the health journey and worked with so many patients and clients. Like even it's not just the foods that we're eating and how they're impacting us, but it's where we are internally when we're consuming those foods. All right. So I work with clients that maybe they're allergic to eggs if they eat them in the morning, right? Maybe because in the morning they're extra stressed. But if they go to eat those eggs at night in the evening time, when they're in a place, maybe they prayed before, they're in this place of gratitude for the food and they've really slowed things down, it has a totally different impact on their entire physiological system. So it's
That's
really, really
wild.
interesting. And yeah, it's cool. You guys have been being more mindful about that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the price because I got an expert here on flotation. I know the way that I've done it. Take the listeners if you've never floated. Now you're curious. You're listening to this podcast. You're like, hey, I've heard about this stuff before. Finally, I'm gonna go do it, or I'm gonna go do it again, like myself. Take me through, like, help me get prepared. Like, what step one through step Z?
All right. Step one, let's see. So things, if I'm going into a float center and I'm working with a new client, just making sure they're cutting out things like caffeine, maybe at least 4 hours before, depending on how quickly you oxidize it. So you're not bouncing around in there any extra. Making sure not to shave day of or anything like that, because there's an immense amount of salt in this and it can sting a good amount if it gets into any cuts. But if you got any cuts or scrapes on you or anything like that, usually when you enter the room, so you go into a float center, you take your shoes off, you check in at the front desk oftentimes, and you get brought to your own private room, right? To your own sanctuary room. You go into the room yourself, and really the only thing you really see in there is a shower and a big, luxurious egg-shaped pod, if they have a beautiful Vitality pod. But either way, they'll have a tank in there. So you go in, you have your own private room, so you lock the door behind you and you can kind of do your own thing in there. But usually you rinse off before, kind of get any body oils or shampoos or fragrances, deodorants off you before you hop in the tank. You strip down to your birthday suit and then you open the tank lid and get in. And when you're in there, you just lay back, close the lid, flick the light off, and float. And a profound chain reaction of physiological responses takes place that will make you feel better and more relaxed as a result.
All right. So now take me between the ears, right? So like how do you coach yourself into finding that state? Because I know a lot of people that I've told to go and float, or at least in those couple of years that I was like pointing people in that direction a lot, like I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't relax. I just could not relax. I could not get in the right mindset. It's like every time I was trying to think about something, I think about a million other things and all this. Take me through that.
Totally. So usually for me, when I'm in the tank, or even about to get into the tank, it's about connecting with some sort of intention for that float session. Um, so maybe that intention is to just totally relax. Maybe it's to focus on my breath. Maybe it's to open up my heart as fully as I possibly can. Maybe I twisted my ankle earlier and it's just to bring some more awareness and consciousness to my ankle, bring some more healing life force energy to that area so it can accelerate the healing and zap the inflammation at its core. But for me, a big piece of it is just surrendering to the silent darkness, which is a very powerful medicine, as deeply as we possibly can, while at the same time focusing on my breath. And it's funny, dude, you're in there and there's no external stimulation coming in. So all that awareness that's usually being broadcast on the external world gets to shine its light inward. So we see a huge increase in that interoceptive awareness when we're inside a float tank. So what that means is that I may be more intimately or deeply connected with the workings of my heart, like the beating of my heart or the processes of my breath. And I might be able to notice it um, likely a lot more deeply. But even my digestion and all these functions of the inner working of the body, it's a lot easier to connect with inside the tank, which is a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah.
But
Advice that you would have for individuals who would want to take marijuana edibles into a flotation tank with them, because there is a subculture of people who do that, and actually other substances as well, to enhance either the psychedelic opportunities that it presents, or maybe some of the medicinal benefits that it presents as well. Your thoughts on that?
yeah, am I speaking to you?
Yeah, yeah, me or the no, well, not necessarily me. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I have experimented with different things throughout the course of my life. But anybody who's looking to do something like that, is there any extra advice or safety or anything like that that they should keep in mind?
Totally. Yeah, no, I'm sure we're in the same boat there.
Yeah.
Dabbled a little bit, but yeah, for me, just my philosophy, because the silent darkness is such a powerful medicine by itself for starters. So I'm not against leveraging other compounds, but just making sure that before we do that, just exploring the medicine of the silent darkness and learning that as deeply as we possibly can, because there's so much fruit there, like we might not need these other plants or herbs that may expand or narrow our consciousness, because when we're in a float tank, um, we're already pretty limitless. It's just a matter of being able to maneuver that with the breath and our awareness and see where we want to take it, and our level of being able to surrender and open up our heart when we're in there. So I think taking that practice as deeply as you possibly can, or at least exploring it reasonably deep first, and then if you want to go and explore some edible THC or something like that, and see how that impacts your journey, feel free, but just make sure we're doing it consciously as always.
How what's the longest you've ever gone? That's a question that people always ask, who's like, how long do you go? What's the longest that you've gone? Like, is there a right amount of time? Like,
Dude, so I've had one in my house since we made the move to Hawaii. The tank's still in transit, but I've had one in my pad for a while, and that was just totally life changing. Just being able to have access to that whenever you need. Maybe get an argument with a family member, you're getting a little hot headed or whatever it is, just after work, getting in and uh, kind of melting away.
I've got
But
I've got a pretty good size office up here in Idaho, and as I was looking at your website, I was like, if I put my desk over here and move the couch over here, I'd have enough room
let's
technically
go.
to put a tank up here. I've got a bathroom upstairs as well. I could easily figure out how to get a little shower in there. Like, I could figure it out.
All right, man. Let's see what we can do. Dude, there's yeah, what part of Idaho are you in? You say Boise?
I'm just outside of Boise. I'm about 40 minutes outside of Boise, a spot called Middleton, which is right in between
Middleton.
Boise and the Oregon border,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah,
I
dude,
think is
we've been installing a bunch of tanks up in the Sand Point area. So if
yeah.
you ever get a chance up there, there's a bunch
Sandpoint's
floating around.
busy, man. A lot of people moved up to Sandpoint. My wife's family has some family members up there in that area, so we do make it up there on a regular basis.
Dude, yeah, no, it's a gorgeous spot. I
Yeah.
mean, gorgeous. Yeah. Yeah, it's so different than Mass and so different than Hawaii, but really beautiful spot.
But
Um,
take me back to the sorry, I interrupted you
yeah, no, no, you're good.
with my remodel of my office, but kind of going back to, what is a typical duration of time? What is what is the sweet spot? What's the longest that you've done? Those types of things.
Yeah. So so average length of a float session, if you go into a float center, typically you can book a session anywhere, depending on the center, from 45 minutes up to 2 hours. Typically is usually the sweet spot in there. Um, but again, with that being said, if someone's like, hey, I could never possibly stay in a float tank for 45 or 60 minutes, it's not the end of the world. And just know that even if you were to book a session and rent out that room for, say, an hour, doesn't mean you have to stay in that chamber for an hour. Obviously, we encourage milking it as long as we possibly can. But with that being said, if it's your first session, one of your first few sessions, and you're anxious, you're claustrophobic or something like that, it's just important to know there's not a padlock on the outside of the tank that's locking you in at any point,
Oh, I
you
thought
know?
about that so
But
many times, dude. I
dude,
that was one thing. Is like you got the guy at the front desk or the gal at the front desk, and then you like walk back to your room and you close the door, and then you're like, man, when I get in this tank, like I'm in a spot that's not my house. I'm butt naked. I'm floating in this body of water. It's completely dark. I do not want to open that door and see a clown, bro. Like that went through my head. So irrational fear, but that truly went through my head about a million times.
dude, I believe you. You got to make sure you trust the person at the front.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like I don't trust that guy. But
Well, I
yeah.
trusted the heck out of him because one of the times that I went, I'd become a regular. And he's like, man, there's nobody else booked. He's like, you want to do like 4 hours? Do 4 hours, man. He's like, we're all good. I'm like, all
Wow,
right, I'll do
that's
four.
a
So that's the
treat,
longest I've done is four. Uh,
dude.
and
Yeah, 4 is great.
I went
4
full
serious.
asleep for at least two of them. Like I was out.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, 4 serious. 4 serious. Yeah, usually you'll see like I said, that the longest centers usually offer is like 2.5. I mean,
Yep.
unless it's a spot like you were in. But yeah, just kind of going back to that doesn't mean you got to stay in the tank for an hour. If it's your first session, you want to explore floating or see what floating's about and experience what it has to offer you and your particular journey. Just going in, and maybe you only last 5 or 10 minutes, your first session, but you go back again. It's important. We always recommend 3 floats in a short period of time, ideally within the first 3 or 4 weeks, because the first session will kind of be like exploring it, seeing what it's all about. Maybe it takes you 50 of those minutes to relax fully, and maybe you only get 10 minutes of the real parasympathetic relaxation response, right? But maybe your second float session, you go in and you're able to relax in just 30 minutes. And then your third session, you're able to relax in just 15 or 10, and you're able to reap more and more benefits of this practice. But for me in particular, like I said, when I had the float tank in my house, I was using it to sleep in at night, and it quickly became my bed, man. I'll tell you. So there, I think the longest we clocked is like 13, 14 hours, but I wasn't really going in it for time. It was kind of like going in at night and sleeping, or sometimes it's a sweet spot between 3 and 5 a.m. Where you're in the deepest stages of your sleep oftentimes. So a lot of people that are maybe looking to like lucid dream or astral project or things like that.
Okay.
One of the reasons I say is my partner, my girlfriend's a like high level hypnotist.
Yeah.
So these are all the tips she has, man. But so between 3 and 5 a.m., you're at the deepest
She's
stages of
just
your sleep.
she's just outside on the outside of that tank doing that MK Ultra shit, just whispering. She's just whispering while you're sleeping. She's just
Dude,
like,
yeah.
"You will pick up your socks."
Legit. Mm. Yeah, man. I wake up sometimes just woken up between 3 and 5, and she's just standing there over me, just whispering.
Yeah.
but but so what they'll say sometimes is like if you set an alarm on your phone at 3 a.m., right? And then maybe you go to the bathroom, you lay back down and go to sleep, that you're in this deep stage of your sleep where you're not fully re-waking back up to that beta or everyday waking brainwave. You're caught somewhere between like delta and theta. So when you lay back down to sleep, you have the intention to stay conscious as you're there. So you're laying there, but you're not allowing your mind, your consciousness to totally surrender to it. Your conscious mind is still staying awake as you're laying there. It will happen oftentimes your body will fall asleep, but your subconscious mind will remain awake, and you can have conscious control with your awareness where you want to take it. So maybe it's dreaming, maybe it's visualizing. I know I've leveraged it a lot with martial arts, maybe pre-fight or pre-competition or something like that, to visualize extra clearly, maybe my walkout or how I want the match to unfold, or me getting my hand raised and bringing in all those feelings at the same time. And this is something that's extremely upregulated inside the float tank, as well as that visualization capability.
Well, I got a future jujitsu match coming up. I might have to get back in and start visualizing a little bit more because I have done some of the exercises that you're supposed to do around that, as far as like just going to the place where the thing is happening and just like really thinking about the setting and you're setting your intention. But it'd be nice to do that a sensory deprived environment.
Yeah, man. Dude, it's so interesting with this whole world emerging field of either passive floats versus active floats that's been emerging, right? So like passive float would be you go in, you surrender to the silent darkness, and you soak up the benefits of that medicine and what it has to offer you in your journey, right? So you have the silent darkness on one end, more passive float. You just go in and surrender to it, focus on your breath, connect with your inner being. But there's also this whole other side of the coin with active floats. So maybe now our tanks, now our vitality tanks have big, powerful underwater, sound transducers on the side of the tank under the waterline. So if you plug in your phone to the aux cord on the back of the tank, now you can leverage the benefits of these powerful frequencies getting transmitted through the saltwater solution itself directly into every single cell and tissue of the user's body. So that's one option. We have guided meditations, breathwork tracks people are listening to inside the tank. Like I pointed out, my partner is a high-level hypnotist. So hypnosis inside the float tank has been shown to be over 5 times more effective when done in sensory deprivation versus when done outside of the float tank, which is really interesting.
It's here's another thing. I just recently had my good buddy Andy Foe. He's a tattoo artist out of Austin, Texas. He was talking about his new tattoo studio, Upside Tattoo. If you're in Austin, go check out Upside. Appointment only though, because he's one of those guys that like he took all the sensory out of a tattoo shop. That was the thing that he did not like. Was that there'd always be music playing. There's all this flash art on the wall. There's all these conversations that are going on all over the place. There's all these different like tables and little knickknacks and stuff all over the place. And he said, you know what? I'm gonna roll out. So he's got a pretty decent sized space. I'm gonna go check it out. He's gonna finish my forearm here some point in time when I schedule it. But he's doing it on jujitsu mats. He's just putting jujitsu mats on the ground, and you're the art. You're the only art that's in that place. And there's no music, and you don't have to have a conversation. And he says, he goes, dude, he goes, when I started doing it like this, you'd be amazed how many people I have falling asleep, saying that there's not as much pain, like they're relaxed. Their body has gotten to a state where that once that a little bit of adrenaline dumps when you're getting that tattoo, it sounds like, what'd you call it, the parasympathetic nervous system, like it just kicks on, and like and then you're just in it. You're just there.
Melt away, man. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm learning a lot.
Really, that's a really great link. I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't heard of that, especially with tattoo parlors. But that's incredible. I respect that a lot.
When you think about the tattoo parlor, and no knock on anybody who has their tattoo parlor set up, that's right for them. Like that's no knock. I'm just very interested in the fact that it is one of the most sensory environments that you're in. You just hear the buzzing, you hear the talking, you hear the music. A lot of times, like when I got the half sleeve done on my right arm, it was just droning on death metal, which I'm a metal fan, but it was just like, man, it's 4 hours. It just and I felt when I walked out, like, of course I love the artwork and really enjoy the artist, but when I got into the car, I just took that big breath. So I don't know. I'm starting to learn here.
Yeah, man. No, I like that because there's this intimate link between our perception of pain, right, and our level of awareness on that particular part of our body, right? Yeah. So let's see, Matt, even just looking at what the mechanism or the teacher of pain, as Paul Chek, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but Paul Chek calls the pain teacher. And the pain is trying to teach us something. And there is always a teacher associated with any sort of pain, whether it's physical, mental, emotional pain of any variety. But for me, right, with that neuromuscular disease we touched on at the beginning, my feet, right? What happened is I became so disconnected with my feet, right? It was so hard for me. If I was getting a massage of my foot, which I need to do more often, it would be so hard for me to feel my foot to the point if someone was touching my foot, I wouldn't even be able to tell where they were touching if I had my eyes closed, right? So my awareness and my consciousness was not as much on my feet, right? And this is a defense mechanism as well, but this is how CMT This is one of the things at the root of CMT is we begin to pull our consciousness for one reason or another. Usually CMT in particular, that particular family of neurodegenerative diseases is associated at the root. And this is something I realized and stumbled upon in the middle of one of my float sessions. I was laying here in the float tank, right? This is fascinating. And I noticed a thought go by in my mind, right? I forget exactly who it was about. It may have even been myself, but it was a thought of judgment, some sort of judgment, right? So as this thought of judgment came by, since I'm in the float tank and I'm so intimately connected with my body, I was able to become more aware of where I was holding that in my body. And at that same instant, that thought crossed through my mind of judgment. I noticed my lower calves and my feet and my hands start to clench up like this as I was almost holding that psychosomatic stress and tension in that part of my body, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
So I was beginning to hold these emotions and these traumas in my body. And as a result of it being held in, it was creating this form of disharmony on an energetic level, on a cellular level. And that's what creates disease. So, whatever, it's my philosophy that the root cause of all disease, right? People always ask me, what's the root cause of X, Y, and Z condition, right? At the root cause of all disease is an energy deficiency in that tissue. And usually there's a mineral piece here as well. Usually magnesium deficiency or copper deficiency at the root of that as well. But it's an energy deficiency in that tissue. So if I'm pulling my energy or I'm pulling my consciousness away from my hands and my feet, you use it or you lose it, like we mentioned earlier in the episode. It begins to create this disharmony and disease and atrophy more quickly. So a practice for me has been bringing my awareness more towards my feet, more towards my extremities, and doing little practices like having my partner tap my feet and just really trying to feel that as deeply as I possibly can. Breathing into my feet, doing things like just taking my feet and putting a paper towel or towel on the ground, just kind of scrunching it up and pulling it up and down with my feet, but bring more energy and awareness to my feet. And I've noticed that my symptoms of the neuromuscular disease has faded immensely. But it was a cool realization there, so I want to share.
Yeah, what an interesting one. There's a couple ways to go here. I think one is there's definitely people that are listening to this talking about you breathing through your feet. And they're like, what is this fucking guy talking about, dude? Like,
sure.
and I can totally understand why people feel that way. Because I was certainly one of those people as well. Up until I started my weight loss journey in 2014, 2015, and started really looking at my body as something that I was responsible for the upkeep on. And that's a whole different mindset. You start looking at it very differently. You start looking for the connection that you've lost. I mean, we've got to look at the cycle of evolution that we've gone through. We've become very comfortable beings. We've taken a lot of that being hunted out of our day-to-day lives, especially in the West. And here we are existing, and we use our brains a lot and we use some motor skills, but the things that we have to do in order to stay alive have greatly diminished. And so we have these kind of like really, soft bodies that are getting disease ridden, and we're losing connection with it, and we're looking to alternative means. I'm sick now. Why am I sick? Go fix me. Here's a pill. Here's a syringe. Here's a whatever. When really it's like, how can I get into the steering wheel of my own body? How can I get to know myself? Like, and have a level of connection that maybe I don't have today, and then start looking at the rest of the stuff. But I think the advice that you're giving of just sensory deprivation be a really great way to get to know yourself. And I think being intentional and thinking about the parts of your body that hurt and learning to breathe and sit with it and exist and be where your feet are, as my friend Brian Bogert says. Just be where your feet are right now. Be present, reduce the stress level. What an amazing gift that would be to yourself.
Big time. Yeah, I think that is the gift to give ourselves and anyone else, because no matter what we're doing, if we're doing that for ourselves, we're going to be able to do whatever they need for the other people more
Yeah.
effectively and more optimally. But one piece and touch on there um, is the fact, like we talk about. So maybe it's post martial arts training. I know for me, the reason I started supplementing floating and the reason it resonated for me so extra deep, like the martial arts helped me so much with increasing my levels of self awareness, right? Because you have to be so extremely self aware when you're performing an art or techniques like you find in the martial arts, especially Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, right? Like everything. I know for me as a Muay Thai coach or practitioner, like every time I throw a jab, right? I'm throwing a jab, but it's always now in my head or inside me to be like, oh, like I can time that a little better. I could do that a little faster. I could hit that jab a little harder with a little bit more pop. You know what I mean? So there's always this level of self-awareness with my body, which is really, really high level. Martial arts have a very, very oftentimes a very high level of body awareness, right? But on the other side of that coin, the yin and the yang aspect is from is for a lot of us balancing that working out that we're doing with the working in. And I feel that's a missing piece for many martial artists today. I know it was a missing piece for me. And when I started supplementing in more of the floating, it doesn't have to be floating. It could be more time in meditation, more time journaling, more time just sitting doing breath work, sitting in a sauna, whatever it is. But more time bring that awareness inside and connecting with your inner being on a deeper level than you are when you're connecting with your body. And you'll notice that the more that you do that, my ability to perform these techniques that maybe I was struggling with before began to increase a large amount. But yeah, just balancing those yin and yang energies is important, I feel.
I love it, man. Well, you're certainly a wealth of knowledge. You've taught me quite a bit today. I got just a couple quick questions before we wrap here today. One, you mentioned earlier that you moved to Hawaii. You're an island boy now, max on
Yes,
the
sir.
island, right? I'd love to know a little bit about that. And then two, every time I have an entrepreneur here, somebody that's growing and scaling a business, somebody who's going out there trying to make massive impact in the subculture, the niche, the market that they support, there's a reason why you did that. And there's ways that people can work with you. So I'd love to know those things as well. So why'd you move to Hawaii? And then tell us a little bit about your business.
Totally, man. Yeah, so made the move from Hawaii. I was moving from Massachusetts, where I'd been almost my entire life. Obviously, a good amount of travel in between, but stationed in Mass. And dude, I felt, and not to, uh, I could put it a better way, but for lack of a better term, I felt me and my partner felt that we were kind of hitting almost a ceiling in a sort of way of our spiritual evolution back in the city, certain parts, especially that aspect. So being able to transition, move to Hawaii, with the community here, with the spiritual peoples down here, and all the new adventures and life experiences here, while at the same time, at the root of it, a desire to connect deeper with the land. That's something that was a little more difficult to do in the winters of Massachusetts as well. But um, but coming here and living on this self-sustaining farm at the base of the volcano, a mile away from the ocean, has been incredible, man. And
What were you in Boston? Is that what you said? Like
yeah, yeah,
where okay. Yeah, I've been to Mass a lot of times. I like it. I don't like it in the winter.
yeah.
I did certainly enjoy Boston a little bit. And then you go, everybody says when you go there, it's like, oh, hey, you go to the north part and get cannolis and do the whole thing. So as a tourist,
Yeah.
I've done all that. But I look at Boston and I'm like, God, I think I could live there, but I think I'd also be like, I think I'd get burnt out. I think the city would just, I've always been a small town guy, and I think I'd always want to be able to get back to the small town. So good for you for recognizing that you needed a little more space. So then you went far away. You just got into an ocean locked, prior volcano erupting place.
Yeah, man, it's so different. But I came and visited like a year before in this farm in particular with one of my boys, and we totally loved it, man. I fell in love with the spot, and when I met my now girlfriend a couple months later, I knew it was something I wanted to do. I wanted to swing it, and she was game, and she had a daughter as well, or still has. now my stepdaughter, a 6-year-old stepdaughter. And yeah, so we enrolled her in kindergarten down here.
Wonderful.
And quickly unenrolled her in kindergarten down here. Did the whole unschooling thing. So we've been doing that now, and been rolling with that. It's been really beautiful. But yeah, I feel one piece that we didn't touch on as much that is coming up with the Hawaii aspect, a similarity. One of my favorite things to do here in Hawaii is go in the ocean. The waves are incredible, dude. I don't know if you ever made it out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you been?
Yeah, I've been to Hawaii about 4 times.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I went
Good
to Maui, went to the Big Island. I did Kauai. I've done Oahu.
Wow.
Oahu twice.
Wow. Yes, we're in Oahu, but dude, we went to Kauai last week for my birthday, and dude, it was incredible, man.
I love Kauai.
Dude, that has to be an unbeaten island in terms of beauty, for sure.
It's unbelievable.
So many things. But soaking up the magnesium through my skin while I'm in the ocean. And for people that don't know at home, just something I can glance over quick is as quickly as possible, is one of the main benefits of flotation therapy is while you are escaping the force of gravity, while you're escaping the world's overstimulation, you are actually soaking up magnesium transdermally through your skin during the entirety of every single float session. And this is incredibly important because magnesium is the 4th most abundant mineral in the human body, right? And over 95% of the world's population is magnesium deficient, right? So this is immense.
Say that again.
The 4th most abundant mineral in the human body. And over 95% of Americans are extremely magnesium deficient. And magnesium is responsible for over 3,751 enzymatic reactions in the body. But a lot of people don't recognize we only have 9,000 enzymes that run the body. So what it comes out to is 42% of our electrical body, our energetic body, is totally run and dependent on this magical master mineral. And this is profound. So everyone always runs to oral supplementation, starts trying to down it. We're trying to get it from your
food. I was about to snort some as you saying that. We're taking this right to the dome, dude. I'm deficient. Don't do that. If you're listening, do not do that.
Dude, it's funny. There's not snorting the salts. I don't recommend it, but you can actually nebulize it, which is an intriguing.
I knew you'd know something.
but dude, just to point out, so for anyone at home, maybe they're hardcore vegan or something like that, they're like, hey, well, I'm getting all the magnesium through my food, right? Well, it's nearly impossible nowadays, especially in the Western world. Even I'm hearing organic, no spray farm in the volcanic soil in the valleys of Hawaii. And still, I am not naive enough to believe that I'm soaking up nearly enough magnesium through my food alone. It's nearly impossible nowadays because our soils are depleted from factory farming and toxic fertilizer, and even the acid rain that's being rained down on them is totally zapping our plants of their minerals. But so when I talked to Dr. Mercola, he's crystal clear. He wasn't able to really start moving the dial on his red blood cell magnesium blood test, which is the most accurate way we can measure our red blood cell magnesium levels, or our magnesium levels in the body today. He wasn't able to really start moving the dial, even with all of his oral supplementation, even on focusing on the foods, until he started introducing transdermal forms, or forms of magnesium being absorbed through the skin. And for him, that's at the float tank that's at his crib. So when he started doing that, his magnesium levels started to skyrocket. And magnesium is so important, man, not just for athletic performance and mental performance, but stress levels, our sleep, and just about everything in between.
I love it. I love it, man. And as we're wrapping up too, I want to encourage people one more time. You can go to the notes of the podcast. Check this out. I've got two links. One is for maxvitality.co. That's the website where you will find the magnesium salt. It's the website that you'll find the float tanks that Max Vitality is out there offering as well. And then I'll have a link to Max's Instagram as well, which is Max. Is that Casa?
Yes, sir.
Max Casa.
That's it.
And the shamanic sensei. I like that. That's you're very good, man. I'm so fired up that there's people out there like you that are just niching down and trying to understand the human body in this way. It makes my life a lot easier to be able to bring an expert on you and time collapse all of my learning and your 8 years journey. We just get to spend an hour and kind of understand how you've gotten to where you've gotten, what your perspective on this stuff is as well. And then also, when folks like you start businesses too, I get all fired up. That's a lot of what this podcast is about, is highlighting individuals who are doing really interesting things that they're truly passionate about, and reminding us all that we have the opportunity to do so as well, especially when you can make massive impact and helping people get in touch with themselves. So Max Vitality, thanks for joining me today, brother.
Thanks for having me on, bro. I appreciate it, man. It was a blast, and looking forward to connecting with more of your peoples.
All right. Cheers, man.
Peace.